So welcome back. After a few prefatory comments, I'd like to go right back to meditation and return to a theme that is completely foundational for everything we're doing for these 5 days, foundational for all of Dharma, actually. And Dharma, again, a term, the referent of Dharma. So what does the word mean? I'm not translating it because I've never seen a good translation. We don't have a word in English or any other European language that I know of, not as the term is used in Buddhism. And very simply, we're taking this alien term that means nothing in English, but what it means in the context of Buddha Dharma, the Dharma revealed by the Buddha, is you're practicing Dharma. You are practicing Dharma if you're viewing the world in such a way and engaging with the world in terms of your behavior in such a way that leads to a lasting state of genuine well-being. It's that. So it's definitely not equivalent to religion, which has been the source of a lot of grief for many people over the millennia. Absolutely not equivalent to philosophy or to science. And yet, in the case of the Buddha Dharma, as one example, a prime example of a Dharma, the Dharma revealed by the Buddha, there are clearly aspects, there always have been, aspects of the Buddha Dharma that we, using our own language and our own definitions of religion, we say that's definitely a religious aspect or dimension of Buddhism. It's true. There's ritual, there's bowing, there's chanting, there's many trappings, including monastic robes, that we say, well, that's religious, and that's exactly right. An aspect of Buddha Dharma is religious, but then from the time of the Buddha himself, many of his teachings were simply not religious. They were clearly philosophical in nature, posing philosophical questions and seeking answers by way of philosophical analysis, inquiry, conjoined with contemplative inquiry. So philosophy has always been integral to Buddha Dharma. Philosophy is not integral to Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, although all three of those Abrahamic religions have conjoined themselves with various philosophies over time, with the philosophy of Plato, as in with St. Augustine, the philosophy of Aristotle, with St. Thomas Aquinas, and so on. So they've adopted philosophies. And then there are elements of Buddha Dharma, the theory and practice, which are scientific, not in the sense of being quantitative or using instruments of technology, but rather radically empirical, posing questions to be tested with experience. And that's what Galileo did. It was debated at his time. At the beginning of the 17th century, Copernicus has his theory that the sun was in the center of our solar system, whereas most people at that time still stuck with the Ptolemaic view. The Earth is in the center, the sun and the moon, planets and stars all revolve around Earth. So it's a very different universe. But they debated this way and that way because Copernicus's mathematics, his theory was very good, but it wasn't that much better than the Ptolemaic mathematics. And then Galileo came along with his telescope and he proved definitively that Ptolemy was wrong. A belief that had dominated European society for 1400 years was flat out wrong. And it was the phases of Venus. That was the kicker, that Venus, like the moon, has phases, but it couldn't possibly if all the planets and the sun and moon all revolve around the Earth. So having hypotheses, testing them with experience, finding the appropriate technology for testing more and more sophisticated theories or ideas or hypotheses. In that sense, then Eurocentric civilization by no means has a monopoly on science. We have an outstanding science for the objective, physical, and quantifiable using the instruments of technology and mathematics. Been a spectacular success. Has greatly improved our hedonic well-being. I think of three things immediately. Our physical comforts. We're not just heating up here in this room, air conditioning, travel, communication, health. There are many more, but those are things, they really come from that hybrid or that fusion of science and technology. And we're all the recipients. Now, global society, to varying degrees, we're all the recipients of the very pragmatic benefits of the 400 years of advance in modern Eurocentric science. So in terms of and given us so many things that are fun, television, internet, fun as in entertaining and helpful and sometimes pleasurable. So we've gotten a lot of perks from the great successes of modern science. What it has not succeeded in, I think there's really little doubt about this, 400 years of this enormous accumulation of consensual knowledge. I mean, biology textbooks that are 800 pages long, and all biologists recognize, yeah, that's good biology, that's sound. Then there are cutting edge theories that remain open to dispute, refutation, or confirmation. So in terms of improving our hedonic well-being, our health, longevity, and so forth, science is a terrific success, and it deserves the admiration and respect, for example, that I feel for it. But over those same 400 years, humanity, first Eurocentric and then spreading globally, because Eurocentric were very keen on colonizing the rest of the world. Can we say that human beings now, in contrast to the 17th century, were now much more ethical, much less prone to violence and to malevolence? Our level of mental afflictions, have they decreased? Less arrogant, less jealous, less greedy, and so forth. And then finally, in terms of genuine well-being, which again, you don't have to look outside of Eurocentric civilization for that. Look no further than Socrates. He was brilliant on his clarification of what is eudaimonia, the Greek term. Are we experiencing, we in a prosperous country like Sydney, at peace, good health system, education, reasonably good government? At least there's a lot worse. Are the people of Sydney, I'm temporarily inhabitant of Sydney. Are we experiencing a greater degree of genuine well-being than Europeans, Americans, Australians 100 years ago, 200, 400 years ago? And the World Health Organization has looked into this. And they found since 1950, in America, for example, wealth has gone up 50 times. Depression has also gone up, not 50 times, but definitely on the increase. It's the most debilitating, whatever you want to call it, the most debilitating factor on planet Earth right now, not cancer or high blood pressure, diabetes, or anything else. Depression is the most debilitating feature of modern civilization, and it's not going down, it's going up. And in terms of happiness, said the World Health Organization, happiness, the level of happiness of Americans over the last 72 years has not increased. So this is not to put down anything, but to tell the truth is not put down something, it's just tell the truth, that we haven't really become more ethical or more mentally healthy or happier, even despite the enormous accumulation, almost inconceivable increase of knowledge. But we have not increased in knowledge of the kind of knowledge that liberates, that calms the mind, that makes it more ethical, and gives rise to genuine happiness. And so that's kind of significant. And as it turns out, if we just take Buddha Dharma, there are many kinds of Dharma, Buddha Dharma and science, it turns out they're quite marvelously complementary. Exactly those areas where science is just resoundingly successful, both in terms of knowledge and practical benefits. Buddhism, really not much at all. But then where Buddhism, like the contemplative culture of Tibet for the last 1,200 years, before it was crippled by the Chinese communists, tremendous insights into genuine well-being, how to cultivate it, nature of mental afflictions, how to remedy them, nature of mind origins, and so forth. Enormous amount of discoveries have been made, and many of those made for the 1,200 years of Tibetan Buddhism were simply replications of discoveries made by 1,500 years of Buddhism in India. Many of those were replications of the discoveries made by the Buddha himself. So it's really a wonderful time to be alive. It's the worst of times because we've never so damaged the environment as we civilized, educated, wealthy people are. It's Eurocentric people primarily that have set off this catastrophe of global climate change and the decimation of other species. 69% of wildlife has disappeared, vanished because of us since 1970. So we did that with science and technology, so it's a two-edged sword. And so all of this then is calling for, to my mind, trying my best to be a global citizen. I can't help where I was born, but I can help where I live and the view that I have. I think we are at an unprecedentedly urgent state of human civilization that before this century is over, we will have either survived the catastrophes we've created for ourselves and come out perhaps even to a higher state of human evolution, or we will follow the trajectory we're on right now and completely undermine civilization so that young people like 14-year-olds who may very well live to the end of the century, if we follow the current trajectory, as Greta Thunberg is happy to remind us, or maybe not so happy to remind us, what the world will look like at the end of the century will be radically unlike what we experience now. It'll be a lot more like Mars. In which case, this is the worst. This is the worst of times, and we've created it. So the shifting of priority, I'll end on this note, then we'll go to the meditation. Right now, 8 billion people, the great majority of 8 million people, when conceiving what is the good life, how can I be of suffering? The first question. How can I be happy? The second question. So assuming I'm not suffering so much, then I might think about, well, could I be happy? I'm glad not to have my head underwater in the ocean of misery, but now my head's above water, might I actually swim to the farther shore and find some happiness? And so right now, I would say that the great majority of the 8 billion of us, human beings, when we're envisioning the good life, we're envisioning hedonia. We're envisioning the kind of happiness we could acquire by greater wealth, greater power, greater status. And that's where the money goes. That's where the education goes. And it's a trajectory that we've been on, probably going back to the time of Galileo, and before that, the time of colonialism, expansionism, imperialism. But now it's over the last, in this century, and especially from the rise of the Industrial Revolution, mid-19th century, Industrial Revolution, capitalism, communism, and materialism all reared their heads simultaneously. And the earth has suffered for it as a result. The most bloodiest wars ever, without comparison, the wars of the 20th century that linger on into this century. And so for this, it strikes me, and I'll end on this note, then meditation. We have prioritized, we collectively, we 8 billion people, have overwhelmingly prioritized hedonia as the path and the culmination of the pursuit of happiness. And many, 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 regardless of their religious background or lack thereof, have completely forgotten about eudaimonia. Even though it took me about 10 minutes on Google to find eudaimonia in Judaism and in Islam, and where else did it? Taoism and Hinduism is obvious, Buddhism obvious, and I knew about Christianity already. So it's hardly some state secret. It's there everywhere, let alone philosophy and positive psychology. But that's not the priority. The cultivation of eudaimonia seems to be more like a luxury item or something to do in your spare time. And then you get back to reality, the real world, and that's making money. Take care of your family, protecting your borders, keeping immigrants out, and so forth. So my sense is, and I may be wrong, it's simply the conclusion I've drawn, is if in the very near future, we 8 billion people don't have a complete sea change of recognizing eudaimonia within our own culture. You don't need to borrow from Buddhism. You don't necessarily have to go to religion, but look in your own culture, and you will find that powerful, wise distinction between hedonia and eudaimonia. One you pursue and never have satisfaction and leads to conflict, and the other one you cultivate can lead to satisfaction and is never competitive. When was a war fought between two nations? We're more compassionate. No, we're more compassionate. And then, duke it out. Or we have greater genuine happiness. No, you don't, we do. And then, battle it out. There's never been a war there. And so if we should shift our priorities for all of education and business and the way government runs and the way we treat the environment to the highest priority being the cultivation of eudaimonia, and to support that, the pursuit of hedonia, we need enough to eat, education, and so forth and so on, then we could restore the balance of the world. But eudaimonia has to be first. And St. Thomas Aquinas pointed this out, what was he, 12th century or something like that, that the whole point of the political life, and by that he meant the pursuit of hedonia, is the cultivation of the contemplative life. That's virtually a verbatim quote. The whole point of the pursuit of hedonia is for the sake of cultivating eudaimonia. So this is not breaking news, but it's news that we've forgotten about. You might hear from a scholar of history, religions, or what have you. So now we turn to the practice at hand. In our meditative practice, specifically and more broadly in our spiritual practice, whatever it may be, and I would imagine there are some people here who are Christian, agnostic, maybe materialist, everybody's welcome here. But whatever we engage in to find happiness and free ourselves from suffering, which is a motivation shared by all sentient beings, not only all human beings. Many things that we do to find happiness, free ourselves from suffering, entail doing something that arouses a kind of stimulation. So in the Buddhist context, I'll just stay home because I feel very much at home in Buddhism. Many people enjoy chanting, reciting mantras, doing ritual instruments, practicing jut, beautiful melody, rhythm. Many people really enjoy studying. really just love reading Dharma books. Some people in the Gelugpa tradition especially really love debate. I mean, they just get high on debate, especially if they're good at it. And visualizing and so forth and so on. Some people really enjoy doing yoga. And so even in the purely spiritual context, authentic Dharma, there are many practices that arouse a sense of pleasure, satisfaction, enjoyment, and they're stimulus driven. You stop doing it and it's not there any longer. There's nothing wrong with those. I said, so the pursuit of hedonia can be really virtuous. Really virtuous. Meditatively cultivating loving kindness, metta bhavana, arousing aspirations, may all beings find happiness and cause of happiness. And reciting that, visualizing that, maybe sending light out and so on. That's a really virtuous practice. And you may really enjoy it. And you enjoy it because your mind is being stimulated by the thoughts that are being aroused, the visualization, the chanting, and so forth. So you say, I'm not putting down hedonia. It can be vulgar and terrible. It can be neutral, like wanting a glass of water and drinking it. And I'm satisfied. And it can be deeply virtuous. And it can lead to eudaimonia. But then there are practices within Buddha Dhamma, for example, where you're not doing something that by nature is pleasant. You're not attending to something pleasant. You're not doing something that's pleasant, that arouses pleasant feelings, but go right to the heart of cultivating genuine well-being. And I'll give you an example. I'll talk about it very briefly and then we'll do it. I'm very confident all of you are breathing and have been since we started. And so you can just breathe and let's breathe more and then not breathe any longer. Or you can take what you're already doing, often usually unconsciously and not intentionally. You can take that natural process of breathing in and out, and you can turn that into a Dharma practice. It's called Anapanasati Samadhi, cultivating samadhi, the unification of the mind, by way of bearing in mind, mindfulness, the in and out breath. Now, I could go in again, we could spend the next 4 days on this topic. It's incredibly rich, simple, and yet very profound. The implications are extremely rich. But why I want to point this out, and then we'll go to the practice, is when you're focusing on the sensations corresponding to or correlated with the rhythm of the respiration. When you're breathing in, you know you're breathing in. You're breathing out, you know you're breathing out. Whether you're focusing on sensations throughout the body or the rise and fall of the abdomen or simply the passage of breath at the nostrils, none of these are by nature pleasurable. They're not pleasurable. It's just, well, the body's breathing. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neutral. Feel rise and fall of your tummy, well, that's fine, but it's not like, oh, I want to do it more. Oh, now I'm really getting off, by hyperventilating. It's not pleasurable like that. And likewise here, the nostrils. So it's not unpleasant, it's not pleasant. And this is the practice the Buddha, the historical Buddha, during the 45 years that he was teaching, turned the wheel of Dharma. This is the practice he taught more than any other. And he taught probably hundreds of different practices. But mindfulness of breathing he highlighted. He was practicing it on the night of his enlightenment, on the night of his parinirvana, his death. He taught it very broadly, very widely, highlighted it very strongly, said it was especially appropriate for people who are very strongly prone to rumination, conceptualization, mind wandering, kind of the just ongoing obsessive, compulsive, and often delusional entrapment in thinking, right? Where you just can't turn it off. So if the thoughts come up obsessively, you didn't choose it, it just happens to you. Like getting COVID, the thought comes up obsessively, and then as it comes up, it just doesn't dangle there in the environment. It scoops you in. So you're compulsively drawn into the thought. You're thinking it. You're not observing the thought now. It drew you in like a kidnapper, putting a bag over your head, some chloroform, and toss you in the trunk. The thought comes along and absconds away with you. Compulsively, you're drawn into the thought. And it's probably now probably not lucid, because you may not even know you're thinking, like a non-lucid dream. And then to top that off, it's not only obsessive and compulsive, but when we really get fixated on a certain line of thought, absorbed in some kind of thought, our imaginations, our memories, our speculations, and so forth, especially, let's say, a prominent political figure, if you like, or anybody else that looms large on the horizon. Well, let's say Putin, for example. He looms large on many people's horizons. What kind of a person is he? And then take anybody else you like. But when we come really lock into, this is the kind of person he is, this is Trump, this is that, then it's very easy to think, then we're caught up, we're ensnared in a thought, a chain of thought. And it's very easy to think, what I'm thinking about this person, or this political party, or this country, and so forth, I'm thinking the truth. All my thoughts are the truth. They're the whole truth. They're nothing but the truth. So help me God. Or so help me nobody, if you don't believe in God. But so help me. And I'll tell every time you think that, you're wrong. Because it's not in the nature of thought to capture the wholeness, the entirety of anything. Not a person, not a place, not an activity. Because by the very nature of thought, it carves and it differentiates. So you always get a slice. You get a piece. But you can't get enough pieces to get the whole. Not with conceptualization. It's the nature of the beast. So at any time when we're thinking about something, if we have the sense, when I'm thinking is the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, that isn't true. So, coming back to the practice, I keep on telling you, we're almost there, believe me. When you're focusing on the breath, you don't need to think about it. You're aware of the rhythm of the breath, whether or not you think about it. You're going right to the immediacy of that first person experience of the body breathing, and do that in a nuanced, subtle, effective way. Cultivate it and develop it, that ability of mindfulness of breathing by way of attending to the breath. And do it a lot. Do it a little bit, you're practicing psychological hygiene. It's good for you, like brushing your teeth and bathing regularly. You won't get cleaner and cleaner and brighter, healthier and healthier, but you'll keep clean. That's good. Right? You will. But especially for those who, at least maybe for a weekend or a week, or maybe like our yogis out there in Western Colorado for a couple of years or longer, immersing themselves in such practice for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, then you start to make some real discoveries. And the Buddha highlighted this. Now, on this note, leave me this time. The Buddha said this samadhi, this unification of mind, this convergence, coherence, composure of the mind, cultivated by way of mindfulness of the in and out breathing. He said this leads to a peaceful state. No surprise there. The congestion, the turbulence, the noise, the cacophony of the mind calms down, and as a result, you feel some peace of mind. Can't purchase it, but you can cultivate it. And then you go deeper. And the Buddha said, as you go deeper, you experience something that he would call a sublime state. First, peace of mind, but go deeper. Balance more finely. Balance, refine, cultivate. And you enter a state, he said, a sublime state. And I see this clearly as a lovely adjective referring to a deepening sense of genuine well-being. Because the enjoyment of the practice, the sense of well-being, is not because you're attending to a pleasant stimulus. The stimulus is neutral, but the quality of awareness you're bringing to it is opening up your inner resources of peace of mind, genuine well-being that's springing right from your awareness and not dependent upon brain chemistry or drugs or entertainment or anything else. It gives you the taste, the flavor, which is sustainable, of an ongoing sense of well-being, a symptom of a mind that's getting healthier and healthier. But he doesn't stop. He said, now continue going deeper and deeper. And then he said, you enter into an ambrosial dwelling, his words in English, something beyond sublime. And this really, the person who discovered this definitely deserves a Nobel Prize, except there are no Nobel Prizes given in psychology, I guess, because the mind just isn't that important. Not as important as economics, for example, in our Eurocentric civilization. But the point here is an extraordinary discovery was made, been replicated thousands of times since the Buddha did. And I'm not sure that he was even the first to discover it. An ambrosial dwelling, a sense of bliss, joy arises, but you're not attending to anything blissful. No stimulation is blissful. A sense of bliss comes right out of your mind now, once again, symptomatic of a mind now that is very finely tuned. A mind that has been freed from things like delusion and jealousy and pride, attachment, hostility. A mind in which these afflictions, these poisons have been subdued, not eradicated, but subdued in the mere absence of those. Peace of mind, genuine well-being, and bliss arises right from the nature of your mind. Now that's a discovery. And it's sustainable and it's not competitive. So now, with that little sales pitch, that was my marketing ploy. Let's practice mindfulness of breathing and become As they said during the time of the Buddha, come and see for yourself. We're not going to cover that much in 20 minutes, but we'll make a start. In our last session, I took a full 20 minutes to give fairly detailed instruction on how to cultivate the balance of the body, settling the body in its natural state, then the respiration, and then the mind. But once you've listened to such instructions a few times, you may assimilate them, and then you can do the whole practice in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, because you remember all the salient points, which makes it a wonderful preparation for any other endeavor you're about to embark on. So now, with much fewer words, a shorter time, begin always on the note of relaxation, letting go, loosening up, letting awareness descend into the body right down to the ground. Letting awareness permeate the body, releasing tension, suddenly comfortably, relaxed, still and vigilant. And on that basis, moving from coarse to subtle, let's settle the inner speech of the mind, the internal commentary, illumination, into its natural state of effortless silence. Easier said than done. But to facilitate that, we settle the respiration in its natural rhythm as we did in the last session, relaxing deeply with every exhalation, releasing the breath fully, releasing thoughts with every exhalation. And when you come to the very end of the exhalation, simply allow the next breath to flow in effortlessly, like a wave washing up on shore. And whether it's long or short, deep or shallow, let the body bring in just enough air that it needs from breath to breath, without trying to influence or control it in any way. And allow the rhythm of your breath to settle, and settle more deeply, as if you were falling asleep. And finally, turning to the mind, recognize that you're already aware of being aware. You know you haven't been unconscious for the last 5 minutes. You know you've been aware. You know you're aware right now, and it's effortless. Rest now in the simplicity of that effortless awareness of being aware. Utterly at ease, relaxed, effortless. Free of grasping, awareness remains right where it is, without moving, without flickering or wavering. And without identifying with or appropriating the ever-changing weather patterns of the mind, sometimes dull, sometimes clear, happy or sad, interested or bored, lax or excited, without merging with any of these ever-shifting mental states and processes, releasing all identification with them, simply being present with them. You can sustain this awareness of awareness effortlessly, in stillness, and by releasing all grasping, unveiling the natural luminosity, brightness, clarity of awareness itself. And by resting in that awareness, you allow the mind to settle in its natural state. Begin as if you were falling asleep, but doing so lucidly. Then we cross the threshold into the shamatha practice. Shamatha meaning tranquility, serenity, serene stillness. We shift over to the practice of shamatha, cultivating samadhi by way of mindfully bearing in mind the in and out flow of the breath. There are many ways of doing this, but I invite you now to explore a technique tracing back at least 1,500 years to a great master, Indian Buddhist master named Asanga. Continue resting in that stillness of your awareness, let it remain right where it is, holding its own ground. And from that self-knowing stillness, let the light of your awareness illuminate the entire somatic field so that you're mindfully present with the whole array of tactile sensations arising throughout the body, in the interior as well as on the surface. Be mindfully present, aware of sensations throughout this body. And be aware of this myriad of sensations of solidity, of moisture, heat and cold, sensations of movement, 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and air, all arising within this tactile field. But be aware of them nakedly, without clothing them in visualizations of the body, thinking about the body, imagining the body. In the tactile sensations, let there be just the tactile sensations. And now within this diverse array of tactile sensations arising within the somatic field, I invite you now to selectively focus just on those sensations throughout the whole field of the body that are correlated with the in-breath and the out-breath. Experience your whole body breathing. without thinking about it, without conceptualizing, but by directly observing. When the in-breath is relatively long, note that it is long. When the out-breath is long, note without thinking about it, that it's relatively long. And on occasion, the in-breath will be short. When that happens, note that it is short. And likewise, when the exhalation is short, note that it is short. In other words, throughout the entire cycle of the in and out breath, note the relative durations of each in and out breath. Recognize the relative duration before you have to think about it, and even without thinking about it. Single-pointedly focus on the rhythm of the respiration without slipping into boredom or dullness, without letting awareness be carried away by some discursive thought, a sound, some other stimulus. Mindfulness of breathing means bearing in mind the rhythm of the in and out flow of the respiration. Without distraction and without forgetfulness. And if you like a little bit more of something to do to keep you engaged and not drift off into boredom and laxity. As the breath flows in effortlessly, without you pulling it in, as the breath flows in, I invite you to gently arouse, focus, concentrate your attention. Observe closely these sensations correlated with the respiration, the inhalation. By so doing, you overcome the tendency of laxity and dullness. With every exhalation, relax, and let go. And by so doing, you overcome the other attentional imbalance of excitation, of agitation. You're releasing the energy that would go into such discursive thoughts. So with each cycle of the in and out breath, as if you were trimming the sails of the mind, in the midst of shifting winds. Balance your attention, maintaining that ongoing flow of relaxed mindfulness that is continuous, stable, and clear. And let's continue practicing a few more minutes in silence. So we will pick up where we left off in the conversation. But again, a brief prelude. I think a lot of people, including myself, have on occasion gone to a meditation retreat, received teachings here and there, with the sense of learning, gaining some new understanding, and maybe learning some new methods of meditation that we practice and then put down, and practice and put down. Don't practice when we get really, really busy, or when we're ill or having a really hard time. But then when things are normal again, then we get back. But really busy, so can't really put in that much time because we're way too busy. The English philosopher and mathematician Alfred North Whitehead made a comment almost a century ago, speaking from England, Great Britain, that religion has become an ornament for an already comfortable life. Rather withering, I think, a withering comment. Nothing even remotely like what Jesus was teaching. That was not an ornament. And likewise, the Buddha's teaching of the Four Noble Truths, the four realities for Aryas, for those who've seen very deeply into the nature of reality, four realities for Aryas. A reality of suffering, reality of source, possibility of freedom, and the path to such freedom. That's not an ornament. And so what Drom Tönpa and Atiśa, the topics they're discussing here, are not little techniques here and a thought there, an insight there, to ornament, to add a little bit of something to your life, to make it more meaningful, less stress, and so on. What Buddhism as a whole, and in this conversation specifically, is offering, is not jewelry or fragrance or powder, but to use a silly analogy, an extreme makeover. Taking your way of life and just revolutionizing, shifting, a state shift in the whole way we are present, engaged, viewing reality as a whole, such that it would be completely absurd to say, if one really understands this and is seeking to assimilate it, as Drom Tönpa said, when he was asked by one student of his, what does it mean to practice Dharma? Good basic question, like what Drom Tönpa is asking his mentor. And Drom Tönpa said, I'll cut right to the chase, his final advice was, give up all attachment to this life. Give up all attachment to hedonia, to the affairs, the concerns, the aspirations, the goals that are relevant only within the context of this life, but at death become irrelevant. How much money do you have? How well have you succeeded in business? How many credentials? How many friends do you have? How many admirers? How many, what is it, Twitter or Chatter or Facebook or whatever? I don't do any of those things, but I understand you can get a thumbs up and people, oh, I have 20 thumbs up. I'm famous, or 20 million, whatever. That's called attachment to this life. He said, give up all attachment to this life and let your mind become Dharma. In other words, you just do a complete shift of the way you walk and talk and go to work and eat and pay your taxes and go on vacation and whatever you're doing, that everything is different because now everything is saturated by Dharma. And that's what he's teaching. And that's what I'm seeking to convey. What you receive, how much you receive, that's entirely up to you. So he's asking about the root of suffering and then the root of misconduct, or another way of spinning this non-virtuous behavior or sin, whatever you want to call it, another way of spinning that, understanding it, another perspective, is behavior that's out of accord with reality. Now in Buddhism, there's nobody punishing us. There's no God or Deva or anybody out there who's, oh, we're measuring how much good and evil did you do. Okay, you're going up and you're going down. There isn't anybody there. Any more than when we violate nature with carbon fuels and pesticides, herbicides, and all the other ways we toxify and spoil the environment. And then we're finding, oh, forest fires, and here's drought, and here's famine, and here's floods, and so forth and so on. Gaia isn't punishing us. There's nobody there doing it to us. It's in the natural course of things. We're behaving in a way that is unrealistic. We thought it was sustainable. Turns out we're wrong. We're wrong. So it's unrealistic to think this is for our benefit. This will be good for humanity. Let's keep on doing this more and more. And all of the countries of the world unite. Let's keep on increasing our GDP because that's going to turn out really well. And when we're not consuming as much, when we're not producing as much, alarm, 5-star alarm, let's get people to produce and to consume more. That's been the modus operandi for quite a long time now, thinking this was going to turn out really well. It's not, right? And so we come back to this prioritization of eudaimonia and recognizing what are the true sources of depression. And it turns out just recently, I knew this for a long time, but just recently I read in one cutting-edge scientific paper that brain chemistry has very little, if anything, to do with depression. Correlations, of course. But whatever you're experiencing psychologically, there will be brain correlates. That's kind of a good working hypothesis. But to think that dopamine levels, serotonin levels, how your neurons are firing and so forth, that's causing your depression, that's a superstition promulgated by the pharmaceutical industry and in an unhealthy coalition with the neuroscientific community. They've made billions of dollars off of that false marketing, because you're not depressed because of your brain states. You're depressed for all kinds of reasons. And depression is not a mental disease, it's a symptom. It could be a symptom you've just lost your spouse in an automobile accident and you're very deeply depressed. Right? There's postnatal depression. Is that because you're ill? So depression is a symptom. So this is getting to the root of things. It's answering a question that we've always been asking. How can I suffer less? How can I find a greater sense of well-being, especially a kind that's sustainable and not simply sporadic? So Drom Tönpa and Atiśa are throwing down the gauntlet at our feet and saying, are you serious about wanting to be free of suffering and finding sustainable happiness? Then you don't need more ornaments. Schmuck, is that what it's called? Costume jewelry. You don't need a little facelift. You need an extreme makeover of the whole way of it. You're engaging with reality, your priorities, and your way of life. But then the rewards are enormous. Much better than simply doing a technique for 20 minutes a day, which is, once again, an ornament or a band-aid. So let's see where we left off. I think it was here. Correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't review the notes since I was away. Master, something that has never been truly existent may seem to be, but that doesn't make it so. Did we go beyond that? Oh, are you proud of yourself? I think that's it, isn't it? Is that what you remember? Can you help me out here? Is that right? That's good? Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, then let's continue. We just interrupt them briefly, had lunch, now we're coming back. Okay, we're listening again. You can continue. So Dom says, something that's never been truly existent may seem to be. And this is just generally true of appearances. When we reach out and touch a stove, wondering whether it's on or not, and we touch it briefly, it really feels, doesn't it feel absolutely like the burner is hot? I discovered something objectively. I put my hand in the freezer and touched an ice cream. Oh, it's cold. And that's green. The walls here are green. I can see them. The green is out there. And there's a fragrance in the air, like in the kitchen. Oh, there's a fragrance in the air. Oh, this food tastes really good. The tastes in the food are really, really tasty, except for none of that's true. They knew this at the time of Galileo. Colors are not there in the molecules. They're not in the photons. And your brain doesn't turn colors. It doesn't turn red and green in the visual cortex. Colors aren't out there. Sound waves are out there, but not sound. They don't travel through space and hit you in the eardrum. And smells, well, they're just molecules. They don't have any smell in them. The food that you had for lunch, I can tell you with certainty, is completely tasteless. Sitting in the refrigerator or in your pantry or what have you, it's completely tasteless food. It's just molecules, and they don't taste anything at all until they strike your tongue. And likewise, the fragrance of the food, there's no fragrance in atoms. And likewise, nothing is objectively warm or cold, smooth or rough. And so all these things appear to be out there. It's called naive realism. That all of these qualia, the immediate contents of our 5 sensory fields, seem absolutely to be really out there. And every psychologist, neuroscientist, and physicist knows that's just not true. Appearances are misleading. Things appear to be objectively real, absolutely out there, even when nobody's looking. The sun is still yellow and bright and blinding when nobody's looking, except it's not. Because the atoms in the sun have no color. The photons have no color. And they're not hot or cold. So imagining the world as it exists when nobody's looking is something scientists have been trying to do for a long time. Up until Galileo, they're trying to imagine what God saw. during the first 5 days before he created human beings. What does God look like? What does the world look like from God's perspective? That was a great aspiration, to approximate God's own perspective, a God's eye view. That was a driving force for many, many scientists, including Galileo, Newton, and many others. But then when theism stopped dominating modern science and scientific materialism jumped into the lurch, then, as one philosopher, Thomas Nagel, said, now scientists aren't seeking a God's eye view, they're seeking a view from nowhere. Except nowhere doesn't have a view, because nobody's there. So things appear to be inherently existent, but nothing actually is. It appears to be, but this is where there's an incongruity, incompatibility, dissonance between the way things appear and the way they exist. So that's the point he's making. Buddhist philosophers elaborate on this at great length. So Drom Tönpa has just made a very perspicacious comment, very insightful comment. And then Atiśa says, Drom, are you proud of yourself? Bear in mind, they've had a whole discussion about pride, whether it's afflictive or not. Are you proud of yourself? And he says, Master, and I've changed the translation here, if imputations, maybe you have that, this is a recent alter, imputations, that which we impute, designate, superimpose upon reality. Right? It's not objectively presenting itself to us, but we're superimposing, projecting, imputing on reality. If imputations can lead to the path, then pride may be okay. It might be useful. Is that a sense of superiority or not? Now, going to superiority is going right into the defining characteristic of the mental affliction of pride. Do you feel that you, not your height or intelligence, creativity, and so forth, your sight, some people see better, or they're making better. It's not whether you have qualities that are better than other people's qualities in some regard, but are you a better person? So is that a sense of superiority, the kind of pride? You've made a very insightful comment. I've acknowledged that. And now, is this a sense of superiority? Is that what you're feeling right now, my student? And he says, Master, is a sense of superiority something to be rejected or not? We've already covered that somewhat, so let's simply continue. A sense of superiority, something to be rejected or not. I've told this story many, many times. I'll tell it very briefly now. Many, many times. So somebody always going to tell that story again. My first encounter with the Dalai Lama in 1971. I knew already at 21, I knew this is all I want to do with the rest of my life. That's it. And this means I want to become a better person. I'd like to be more compassionate, more wise. I'd like to have better samadhi. I'd like to be more patient. I'd like to cultivate a whole bunch of positive qualities and being impatient and arrogant and et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to be doing away with those. And so in short, I'd like to be a better person. And then I thought, yeah, but I've just started and I'm already feeling a bit superior to the newcomers who arrived yesterday, whereas I've been here for 2 months. I thought, oh, well, how's this going to turn out? I'm already feeling superior and I'm still wearing diapers, basically. If I do this for 10 years, does that mean I'm going to be really, really feeling superior? And then that just turns out to be, counterproductive. I didn't have a solution. So I asked him, my very first interview, audience with him, this is a burning question because I thought, I can't go there. I know what arrogance is like. I've experienced that. I don't want to develop better and better qualities and be more and more arrogant. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable being arrogant. In fact, feeling very, very, very fragile. Very fragile. I don't like it. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the repercussions of it. And I asked him, and very, very brief, he told me that if you develop qualities like the ones you want to cultivate, greater insight, understanding, wisdom, and so forth, just look, where did it come from? How did that happen? Are you the sole cause of, developing greater wisdom and all these virtues? Did you do it all by yourself? Are you a self-made man? And of course, that was the furthest of my thoughts. That whatever I was cultivating was thanks to the teachers that I had, the support, and so forth and so on. And so he said, whatever qualities we have, virtuous qualities, look where they came from. Look at all the people who helped, all the conditions that have helped. And then the best, and he was speaking to me, the only realistic response as you grow in virtue and genuine well-being and attenuating your mental afflictions, the only realistic response is not arrogance. That's just stupid. I'm elaborating what he said. But that's unrealistic. Saying, oh, I'm so special. I'm superior. Baloney. Bollocks. The only realistic response is gratitude. And that worked. That really worked. I felt that probably every day ever since. Not bollocks. Another word. Gratitude. Gratitude, yeah. He gave the analogy of a beggar who was just trying to scrounge up a little bit of, leftovers here and there, and invited into a mansion where they're serving a sumptuous feast. And they invite him in as if he were a member of the house, of the family. And he just eats to his heart's content. And he said, would that beggar who's now just been offered a feast, would he feel proud having eaten so much? And of course, that was a powerful analogy. To feel proud, oh, look how much I've eaten. It's just ridiculous. Only gratitude is the only one that makes any sense. And I felt that as I received so many thousands of hours of teachings from my Buddhist teachers, but also I had a free education at Amherst College, got my BA and a free education at Stanford. I didn't pay a cent, scholarship all the way. And I just have more to be grateful for. So it's very simple. And it's not humility. It's not really humility. It's just being realistic. It's not true. So there it is. So is a sense of superiority something to be rejected or not? And Atiśa goes right to the core of it. A sense of superiority, if it entails attachment, it is to be rejected. Attachment, self-centered attachment, my qualities, my expertise, my genius, my hard work. I'm a self-made man. And it's all about me and my attachment and my appropriation of virtues that in fact arose independence upon many, many causes and conditions. So it entails the delusion of self-centered attachment, then it's to be rejected. But that theme that all unwholesome, sinful types of misconduct, non-virtues, they're out of accord with reality. Well, there's a reason I say that Buddha is not punishing or rewarding. That doesn't ever come up. Nobody is. But in the natural course of things, those actions that are really out of accord with reality, because they're rooted in delusion and nurtured with attachment or aversion, jealousy, or conceit, these are out of accord with reality. And we act on them, and over the long term, perhaps even the short term, they don't turn out well. When we act out of accordance with reality, it doesn't turn out well. And that's why it's called non-virtue. So back when I was a kid, the extravagant use of DDT, well, they thought that was pretty cool. We get rid of so many bugs, except for a book written called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. If you do that, you're going to wipe out all your bird life. So that wasn't realistic, because then that's not good for us, let alone the birds. So there we are. We come back. If it's rooted in a sense, an attachment, which is rooted in delusion, it's to be rejected. It's out of accord with reality, and you suffer as a result. But then Dom counters, if it doesn't entail attachment, is it not to be rejected? And Atiśa responds, Dom, a sense of superiority, free of attachment, is a facsimile. It's a facsimile of the mental affliction of pride, arrogance, conceit. It kind of looks like it, but it's not. A master pianist, for example, Otto Rubinstein. My parents took me to a concert when I was 14, living in Basel in Switzerland. And here's one of the top pianists in the whole world. Did he know that he was one of the top pianists in the whole world? Of course he did. How can he not? He's not stupid. And so does he know, is he aware of that most pianists cannot possibly play as well as I can? He's just being realistic. That's just true. He was extremely gifted, for starters, and then he had undoubtedly superb teachers, and he trained and trained and trained. And then when his big sausage-like fingers would float over the keys, it looked like it was totally effortless. Well, it is if you're him, and you've put in all those years and years of training, and you're very gifted. So there was no toxicity. If Otto Rubinstein felt, I'm one of the finest pianists in the whole world, then all of his peers would say, you got that right. It is superior. He is a superior pianist. Now, is he a superior person? Is he more compassionate, more wise? Look at all the other virtues. I don't know. It's not for me to judge. But in one sense, as a pianist, definitely he was superior. So Dom counters then, what should one do in response to a sense of superiority with attachment? It's self-centered attachment, rooted in the sense of I'm autonomous, I'm real, this is who I really am, and I'm better. What should one do when such pride, toxic, afflictive pride arises? And Atiśa says, don't try to crush that pride. Crush it. It's like somebody offers just a little teaspoon of arsenic. You might want to try it. You probably don't know the taste. You might find the taste interesting. Just a teaspoon. Go ahead and try it. Crush it. Master, with what methods? Don't try to bear in mind the practical instructions of gurus who put the teachings into practice. Think about all the teachings you receive. You answer your own question. And then Drom Tönpa, oh boy, he said, what are those gurus' practical instructions? And then Atiśa gets really tough. Dom, you've been taught from the time mundane existence came into being up to the present, and now you're asking your guru for practical instructions? This isn't your first, we say in Cowboy West, this ain't your first rodeo, pard. This isn't your first Dharma teaching. I mean, come on, draw from the many teachings you receive in this lifetime, let alone all the preceding. What are you asking me for? Like you're a complete novice. Oh gosh, what do I do when pride arises? I get real, Buster. No, he's chiding him a bit here. And then Dom responds, well, we have indeed had a relationship. He's speaking of Atiśa and himself, you and I. We've had a relationship since mundane existence came into being. And we're still together, aren't we? It's interesting. These are two, they're practicing insider trading. They both have a very, very deep background in Dharma, and they're trading insights and sometimes just having some humorous moments and so forth. But we know, going back to the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha achieved perfect enlightenment, and he knew it. He knew that he had achieved what so many countless beings before him had tried to achieve and hadn't. He knew that he was, in very important respects, had achieved a very superior state due to many causes and conditions. And his compassion, I think we can be very confident, his compassion was even for all sentient beings. He didn't prefer people, Indians over Bhutanese, over Mongolians. But he didn't just kind of wander around India sporadically saying, well, I wonder if I'll find somebody who would be interested. When after his 49 days was just resting in his enlightenment, he stood up. He stood and he looked in his mind's eye, who would be ripe, who would really truly benefit from the Dharma I am now prepared to share. I know the reality of suffering, its source. I know freedom, and I know how to get there. So this is absolutely priceless, what I know with my own direct perception. And then he thought of his two former teachers. He saw they'd passed away. And then he thought of his 5 companions with whom he engaged for years in ascetic practices. They were like military buddies, like a squad of military buddies going through so many hardships. But I understand in warfare, very deep bonds can arise among comrades in arms. They lay down their lives for each other, not for other people maybe. And so they were comrades in arms, Gautama and his 5 companions. And he knew where they were. And he knew these 5, they have very little dust on their eyes. They'll get it. So he made a beeline from Bodh Gaya to Saranath, sought them out. And why? It wasn't just that they were special or gifted, but he knew from his own clairvoyance of past lifetimes, those 5 and he had had lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, had close relationships. Student and teacher, brothers, siblings, parent and child, and so forth. There were very, very deep karmic connections there. And so therefore, because of the nature of the karmic relations, he was clear they would be right, they will get it. And they did. And so that's relevant to this right here. What was that? Oh yeah, so Atiśa and Drom Tönpa, before Atiśa even went to Tibet, I think it was before he even made his way there, his personal deity, his Yidam, Tara, feminine embodiment of compassion, enlightened compassion, just about positive. She told him before he went to Tibet, there'll be one disciple there who will be a very special disciple for you, your premier disciple. You will meet him, he'll connect with you, and he'll carry your lineage. And she was referring to Drom Tönpa. So she saw, okay, there's a really strong connection here. As in many, many lifetimes, Panchen Rinpoche, Dalai Lama, Panchen Rinpoche, including to very recent times. And so they both knew, these are both very mature beings, both of them have deep realization already. They both knew they had a long relationship in previous lifetimes. So Drom Tönpa said, well, we've been together many, many lifetimes. We're still here, aren't we? We're still having a conversation. And then Atiśa backs off and said, Drom, I was teasing you. You know, don't take everything too seriously. I was teasing you, joking with you a bit. And Drom Tönpa says, Master, I was simply offering a good comeback to your chiding. Now you're waiting for some teaching? Now, as you've never heard any? I'm just giving you a good comeback. And then Atiśa says, Drom, your answer was red hot. Now you know what that means. Red hot. Spot on, mate. So, Master, if it is timely, if what I said was the right time, the right place, it was timely, it's a good comeback, then it's appropriate response. And then Atiśa says, sorry, you said if it's timely, it's a comeback. And then Atiśa says, Drom, in your case, has your time come? Timely, has your time come? No, how would you answer that question? Has your time come? And Drom Tönpa gives an utterly unpredictable response. He said, Master, I'm not a sky flower. It's an insider joke. In Buddhist philosophy, dialects, debating, and so forth, they need to give some instance of things that don't exist at all. Like the son of a barren woman, that's a classic one. Rabbit's horns, they don't exist at all. A flower that just springs right out of space, oh, there it is, doesn't exist at all. So he said, I'm not a sky flower. He said, I'm not non-existent. You've just asked me whether my time has come. Well, I'm here. I'm not non-existent. I'm not a sky flower. And then Atiśa says, well, then who are you? Uh-oh. Come back to that deep one, right? For which Socrates said, I don't have an answer. Now Atiśa is asking Drom Tönpa, then who are you? And a lot of this conversation now is going to be, you'll never see it coming. This is not a formatted, how do you say, interview. Master, who is white in color? That's not the question. That's not how you'd expect them to answer. Who is white in color? He said, who are you? And he said, well, who is white in color? Well, he knows who he's talking to. It's Atiśa. And Atiśa knows who he's talking to. It's Avalokiteshvara, appearing as a human being. As Atiśa is Amitabha, appearing as a human being. And Amitabha, by the way, is red. Who is white in color? In other words, he's just disclosed who he really is and who he knows he is. I'm Avalokiteshvara, you know it, and I'm telling you who's white in color. Drom, you know how to wait for the right moment. You know when to drop it. Put it in. Okay, spot on. Very timely. You identified yourself. You are a human emanation of Avalokiteshvara. Good. You waited for the right moment. And Drom says, Master, if one waits for the right moment, that's wise. And then again, Atiśa then turns the conversation in an unexpected direction. Drom, every wise person is on the go. Every wise person is on the go. They're not static. They're not frozen. They're on the go. And Drom asks, Master, why is this so? Why? And Drom, because they need to hasten after all the right moments. Right moments occur many, many times throughout the course of the day. You see somebody who seems to be lost, there's a right moment, help them. You see somebody who's looking for something, you help them. You see this person is in need, in distress, and that's the right moment, and you intervene, you help, you reach out to alleviate suffering, to help people find the happiness they're seeking from day to day, moment to moment. And so this keeps them busy, those bodhisattvas, because there's always something coming up that will catalyze them into action. Every wise person is on the go. They know how much suffering there is in the world. Unimaginable amount of suffering in the world. They know what the causes are. They know how to alleviate them. They know what the true causes of happiness are. So when people from moment to moment, everyone they encounter from moment to moment, striving for happiness, trying to be free of suffering, and they see they could really use a hand, they could use a bit of help, then you're looking for those moments and then you leap into action. They're out of compassion. They're always on the go. That's what bodhisattvas do. They're on the go. They've manifested to be on the go. But Drom Tönpa says, well, why? Why is every wise person on the go? Why is this so? And Drom, because they need to hasten after all the right moments. As soon as they see an opportunity, the bodhisattva precept, It's the Buddhist precept. When you see somebody in need of suffering and you can alleviate it, then you're on the go. When you see somebody seeking happiness and they're not finding it, you're on the go. That's the whole reason of your existence. That's the meaning of existence. They need to hasten after all the right moments. Master, whether or not it is fitting, one who hastens is on the go. And then Atiśa again turns it with a little bit of humor. The master laughed and said, oh, like you Tibetans, you're always on the go. You're always so busy, 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 busy. Gyatranabachir, my primary Dzogchen Lama, he would often refer to Westerners as so busy. You're so, so busy. In Tibet, kind of laid back, got no television, no internet. The highest technology they had was a water wheel to grind your barley. And they had another wheel, a very cool one. It's a recent invention called the prayer wheel. And they perfected it. And then they made no progress in making better prayer wheels. They didn't have solar-powered prayer wheels. Bummer. So when it came to technology, they were happy just to make no progress at all. Because then they could turn all their attention inwards. And so they weren't much on the go. I mean, I've lived with Tibetan for many years, been there 4 times. And overall, prior to the invasion of modernity into traditional Tibet, which frankly had hardly changed in any deep way, it really hadn't changed much at all. You go to villages and you couldn't tell whether in the 18th century or the 20th or the 14th. They found something sustainable. That's it. Tibetans had one of the most sustainable economies of anywhere on the planet. There was no depletion of livestock, of natural grazing land. They didn't deplete. They were in sustainability mode for hundreds and hundreds of years. They kept their population capped by having 1 out of 5 boys become a monk and 1 out of 7 girls become a nun. So that means they're off the evolution market, not creating progeny. So they had something utterly sustainable. And they weren't busy. They really weren't busy. Kind of like, oh, they say, Nima Ringbo, the days are long. Days are long. They weren't busy. Here and there, some busyness, but overall, no. But for Atiśa, Tibetans look pretty busy. From a contemplative perspective, they're busy harvesting the grain and selling their yaks and going looking for salt and selling this and selling that and raising kids and so forth. From Atisha's perspective, you Tibetans really busy. It's like you Tibetans. And then Drom Tönpa made me feeling a little bit, Master, or like Indian mendicants. So he turns it right about. Oh yeah? Well, how about Indian mendicants? But then Drom Tönpa, got his Atiśa counters, Indian mendicants? Well, they chew every grain of rice. Like John Kabat-Zinn and his raisins, 5 minutes per raisin. The Indian mendicants, they would really masticate. They would really chew. And so that's how they're busy. And so Atiśa says, well, the Indian mendicants, they chew every grain of rice. They're not busy, just slowly, slowly. And Dom counters, that results in the right degree of granularity or coarseness. They masticate well. So again, they just go into friendly conversation. And then suddenly there's something else utterly unexpected. So we continue in this conversation, expecting a conversation to go on. And suddenly, as Dom spoke these words, that Indian mendicants chew their rice really well. And then suddenly, out of the blue, as Dom spoke those words, a green lady carrying a vase filled with nectar, the nectar of primordial consciousness, poured it into 2 crystal ladles, one white and the other yellow, and offered them to the master and his spiritual son. A green lady. Okay. This is Avalokiteshvara having a conversation with Amitabha, and suddenly there's this apparition of a green lady popping up and making, ambrosial offerings to Avalokiteshvara and Amitabha. Guess who that green lady is? Well, Atisha, as I mentioned, his personal deity was Tara, usually manifesting as white Tara, but of course she can take on any color she likes. And green is a color of activity, Amoga Siddhi. It's a color associated with wind, motility, movement, action, getting things done, green. And so that's green Tara in action, Tara getting things done, leaping to the rescue of those in need and danger and so on. So this apparition of green Tara manifests, and offering them both these ambrosia in crystal ladles. And she drops in, like serving them this, and then she says, swapping jokes makes you very thirsty. And I too have heard the uproar about your humor, addressing both of them, and it seems to be true, so I've come to listen. You didn't see that coming, did you? Unless you read ahead. Okay, so suddenly we have a third party here. But nobody else would see her because these two men have pure vision, and they're seeing Tara just dropping in. Cool. And so then Drom says, oh, lady, are you a mendicant as well? Hey, hey. She chuckles. In the company of a white youth, I've had to go in all directions, she replied. In the company of a white youth. Well, we know who the white youth is, right? It's Avalokiteshvara. Like one of the most beautiful, touching, mythopoetic stories I've heard in the whole Indo-Tibetan tradition. I'll tell it right now. Very short. Avalokiteshvara, this 10th stage Arya Bodhisattva, right on the cusp of perfect enlightenment. He's serving, alleviating suffering, calming mental afflictions for eons and eons and eons. Just doing his very best to alleviate suffering and its inner causes. And then he pauses for a moment just to see, well, okay, I've been working for so many eons, alleviating the suffering of the world, and how's it doing? And he sees there's still an ocean of suffering. An ocean of suffering. So much work yet to be done. And then he broke into tears. I've been striving for so long, doing my very best as a highly realized bodhisattva, and there's still so much suffering. He just wept. And then in this mythopoetic story, it says, and out of one of his tears emerged Tara, feminine embodiment of compassion, Avalokiteshvara being the male embodiment of compassion. She arose, feminine mode, and she says, do not grieve, I will help you. I love that story. And so who is this white youth that Green Tara has been accompanying all this time, helping, assisting each other? It's Drom Tönpa. It's Avalokiteshvara. So I've been in the company of a white youth, and I've had to go in all directions. And Atiśa asked, why was the white youth in such a hurry? Why was he so busy? And she replied, Master, because of having so many mothers. Sometimes he was carried away by joy and happiness because they were so happy. And at other times he had to look after them because they were so sad. And Atiśa asked, well, how many of them were there? How many mothers did this white youth have? And she responded, Master, it would be good if there were numbers and limits, but there aren't. There are countless sentient beings. And in the Buddhist worldview, all these sentient beings over the course of an imaginable period of time, each one has been our mother, our father, our child, friend, and so on. And so we can't put a number on it. How many mothers did this white youth have when all sentient beings have been his mothers? So it'd be good if we could give a number to it or a limit, but there aren't any. And then Atiśa having his dialogue with Tara. He says, well, lady, isn't space their limit? Aren't all sentient beings as vast, as limitless as space? Isn't that the limit? And then she counters, Master, then you measure space. I've just told you there's no measure, no limit, and so forth. You're saying, how about space? Well, if you think space is the limit, then tell me, you measure space. How big is it? And Atiśa replied, I don't know how. Ask Dom, for he gets around a lot. And he likes to perform emanations and withdrawals. So emanation withdrawal, all of you have engaged in the state regeneration practice. This is it. You dissolve your ordinary identity in emptiness. You arise as personal deity, Tara, Avalokiteshvara, and then you imagine, in pretty much every sadhana I've ever encountered, you imagine emanating forms to alleviate the suffering of others, bring them to happiness, and then drawing them back in. When the job is done, drawing them back in, and emanating and drawing in, emanating like exhaling and inhaling, these many emanations or embodiments. Again, an analogy given commonly, not quite emanation, but we can see why one might say so. The full moon in a bright, clear sky, a night sky, perfectly clear, emanating 10,000, 100,000 reflections of the moon in all these pools of water. And each one being a sentient being who needs to be helped. And there's the emanation, the reflection of the moon. And as soon as that water dries up, then, in a manner of speaking, poetically, then that reflection is drawn back to the moon, right? But it's effortless. But wherever there's a pool, someone in need of the assistance of Tara, then she's there in a snap. So emanation and withdrawal. So that's it. That cycle is everywhere throughout nature. Emanation and withdrawal, exhalation, inhalation. And you can think of many, many other examples in nature. Even according to Einstein, and more recently, Roger Penrose, most famous mathematician alive, both of them, and I'm sure many other eminent physicists, have rejected the notion that there was a big bang and it'll just get colder and colder and colder, and then it'll just go flat into the big whimper of the universe just going dead, flat, even, and lifeless. Now, both of these, Einstein, a long time ago, and then more recently, Roger Penrose says, no, it's not right. It's cyclical. So you have a big bang, and then the expansion, and then contraction back to the singularity. And then that sets up another cycle, expansion and the singularity, taking place billions of times, over billions of years, but also not just one. And that is Roger Penrose quite clear, many others are as well. Why should we believe this is the only universe? And so positing there could very well be other multiverses all over existence and being out of phase, expanding, contracting, this is contracting, expanding. And so countless of these whole world systems, universes, except for the multiverses. And that's a more realistic, big picture of what's going on. Expansion and contraction, expansion and withdrawal, emanation and withdrawal. And, oh, by the way, that's a Buddhist view, and it has been since the time of the Buddha. World systems emerging from emptiness, emerging from the formless realm to the form realm, and then this world that we are, and then time of destruction where they're withdrawn again over billions of years, and then expansion and then withdrawal, and multiple, countless expansion and contractions of universes throughout space. So the Buddhist worldview preceded modern science by many, many centuries. But if it's a discovery, it didn't come from having fantastic mathematics and telescopes. It came out of contemplative discovery. So it is interesting when there's a congruence there between cutting-edge theories in physics and Buddhism. Maybe a coincidence, maybe not. Come and see. So Atiśa turns Tara over to Drom and says, well, and ask him whether you can make this. He's really done a lot of emanation withdrawals. There should be some limit even to space. And then Drom interjected, Master, how many acts of emanation and withdrawal do I perform? And Atiśa tells his own disciple, your emanations are as extensive as space. Then Drom counters, Master, I beg you, then reveal the dimensions of space. If you say they're as extensive as space, you should know what you're talking about. In which case, how big is space? Because you've given that as an analogy. And Atiśa countered, well, Drom, what are you saying? I've never measured the extent of space. And then Drom, who simply really seems to like debating, he says, Master, you've subtly told a lie. Having said that I, Drom, perform emanations as extensive as space, you would now admit that you have not measured space. So basically, you don't know what you're talking about. You've said it's extensive space, but you don't know how extensive space is. So then, what's up with that? Atisha is not going to just sit there. He says, well, I said your emanations are as extensive as space, but not that space has limits. Master, if you say that Drom, and he's referring to himself, if you say, it could be Tara, but I think it's Drom. Master, if you say that Drom performs emanations to the extent of space, when you relate this analogy to its referent, space, and then his emanations and so forth, you should understand both the analogy and its referent. But you, a learned man, have related them without such understanding, haven't you? So maybe they're both kind of doing a pincer move on him, pinning him down. Gotcha. And so Atiśa said, okay, it was Drom. Drom, for now, I grant you that. I grant you that. However, if to say that something is as extensive as space, one had to comprehend space itself, no one could use space as an analogy. But a lot of people do. Your love is as great as space. Compassion, your wisdom is like great as space. Sentient beings are as vast as space. I mean, it's not just Buddhists use that analogy. But if you have to actually fathom completely the nature of space to be able to use that as an analogy, then nobody can use it. So Atisha's kind of defending himself here. But then Drom counters, is this not a case of acting out of ignorance? You're saying it's like space, but you actually don't know what you're talking about? He's tough. And the Dalai Lama has really encouraged this himself today. To this day, he's often been very, very critical of blind faith in guru-disciple relationship, which reading many texts literally out of context, Tibetan texts, excellent texts, it can really look like, if you're really cultivating guru yoga, proper, authentic devotion to your guru, it can easily look like you're now supposed to withdraw any judgment, assume your guru is omniscient, have absolute obedience, basically like surrendering your own powers of discernment. It can easily look that way. And some lamas, if you want to be very blunt, have taken advantage of that and have misused power. That's just true, isn't it? And very tragic because a lot of people get hurt. The Dalai Lama, this is not new. This is going back to 1970s. He said, never adopt blind faith. Don't just have the view your guru knows everything. Everything the guru is perfect. Never criticize. Always think, oh, it's perfect, it's perfect. Don't do that. Maintain your own discerning intelligence. Don't sacrifice your own integrity on the altar of your devotion to the guru. Be discerning, be intelligent. And if your guru gives teachings that appear to you to be incompatible with the Buddhist teachings while presenting them as Buddhist teaching, you have every right to ask the guru. You said this, but the Buddha said this. Nagarjuna said that. Asanga said that. So how do your teachings measure up? With reverence and respect, Guru, please explain this, because it looked like you've just said something completely incompatible with the Buddha Dharma. And that goes for teaching. They have to be authentic. Otherwise, you shouldn't teach. If you're saying, I'm a Buddhist teacher, and then you make up your own story, then you're a fraud. And that's in terms of the teaching. And then there's conduct. And it's way too easy to say, oh, I'm a Lama, I'm a Vajrayana Charya, I'm Rinpoche, I'm this, you can't judge me. And so, yes, I was doing things that look bad, but no, I have crazy wisdom. And they give them this whole song and the dance to pull the wool over their eyes. So no, it goes for conduct as well. And if you see your guru, with whom you may have a Vajrayana relationship, but you see your guru behaving in ways that appear to you to be incompatible with Buddhist ethics, including Vajrayana ethics, incompatible with the teachings on ethics that Buddha himself presented, then you have a right and a responsibility to ask the guru, Lama, you behave in this way, but as far as I know, this seems to be incompatible with what Tsongkhapa said, Padmasambhava said, Nagarjuna, please explain yourself. Did you make a mistake? Then okay, then I understand you made a mistake, but please explain. And you have a right and a responsibility to do that and not think, oh, the Lama has crazy wisdom, the Lama's, bollocks, wrong. Now, that's the Dalai Lama today commenting in the 21st century on Guru Yoga. There is never any point where blind faith is what you're required to do. If it were, I probably couldn't play the game because I'm not good at it. I never have been. And so Drom Tönpa is doing exactly that. He's challenging his guru in a respectful way, but he is challenging his guru. And the Dalai Lama said, when I'm giving teachings, you don't have to agree with what I said. You can disagree. Just, do so in a logical way. But because you're my follower, it doesn't mean you'd have to say, oh, everything you said is infallible. After all, he's the Dalai Lama. Don't do that. So Drom Tönpa, the previous incarnation of Dalai Lama, is doing what he tells us to do nowadays, encouraging. And by so doing, then an awful lot of grief can be avoided altogether. Because if the guru is misbehaving and the disciples never call him on it, then in a way, the disciples are also culpable. You should have challenged your guru. That was your responsibility, and you didn't. You act like you're stupid 5-year-olds. So then if you're suffering, well, then take some of the responsibility for yourself. Because you were gullible, stupid, and naive. And that's not what Buddha should do. And so what does he say? So is that not a case of acting out of ignorance? It's difficult for the mind to fathom the extent of space. And then Atisha counters, well, then regarding the statement that the nature of existence of all phenomena is like space, who can measure this? A common statement. The actual nature of phenomena is as vast, as open as space itself. But then who can measure space? So he's coming right back to Drom Tönpa. Don't take everything so literally. Drom Tönpa counters that is taken as an analogy for what is measureless. If space had limits, it wouldn't be a suitable analogy. Okay, voila. thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Good Aristotelian there. But not, he preceded, that is, Buddha preceded Aristotle. Dom, I rejoice. What a delight it would be if I were surrounded only by people like you, who have no pride and are learned in the Dharma. In other words, you're the kind of disciple I want. You're willing to challenge me, go back and forth until you're satisfied. Now that's it. I wish I had disciples. All of my disciples were like you, really smart and learned, and you don't go for the easy solution. So he said, oh, I wish I was surrounded by people like you. And then Drom Tönpa comes right back at him. Master, that would be of no benefit. This guy doesn't stop, does he? He really likes to, wrestle. Instead, it would be a far greater delight if all sentient beings became like me and were here in your presence to partake exclusively of the Mahayana Dharma, the way of the Bodhisattvas, the path that leads to perfect awakening of a Buddha. That would be better. However, and now he's about to put his foot into it. Oh boy, all the way up to his ankle. However, this seems to be as rare as it is difficult to attain enlightenment as a woman. Uh-oh. He's speaking from the 11th century. It was entirely patriarchal, and all human societies were, so let's give him a little bit of a break, but not much. But what was the view of women in the 11th century in Europe, and in China, and in India? But yes, this is patriarchal. It's misogynist. Like, oh, you can't achieve enlightenment because you're a woman. Better to be a man, of course. And so, okay, he set himself up. And bear in mind, Tara's listening. He didn't think about that, maybe. And this seems to be as rare as it is difficult to attain enlightenment as a woman. Not impossible, but boy, you really got the short end of the stick. You should have taken birth as a man, then a lot easier. Just as he spoke those words, the blue-green lady appeared. Boy, she's not going to put up with that. The blue-green lady appeared in the brilliantly luminous form of a male Tathagata. She's appearing as a Buddha with 32 major and 80 minor marks. Bam, there she is, golden and male. And Atiśa laughed. I think he's getting belly laugh. I think this is not a chuckle. He laughed and explained, what you have directly manifested to us is an excellent form indeed. In other words, Tara is not inherently female, let alone inferior. She can take on any form she likes, including as fully manifest Buddha. And so I think Atiśa is really enjoying this now. Dom replied, one who has already become enlightened, like Tara, one who has already become enlightened can display any kind of form, both excellent and poor. They can manifest any way they like, as a rock, a tea kettle, a dog, anything, right? Ability to emanate is just limitless. So he's saying, not a big deal. She's Tara after all, right? But I was referring to women who are bound by the fetters of mental afflictions, not Tara. Then the lady returned to her own form and asked, great compassionate one. She's addressing Drom Tönpa by his true name, Avalokiteshvara. Great compassionate one, whose afflictions are greater? Mine, or those of a woman bound by the fetters of the afflictions? Klesha. Whose afflictions are greater? Mine or those ordinary women you're talking about? I carry the afflictions of all sentient beings, while a woman who is fettered by them carries only her own share. Without relinquishing the afflictions, one does not become enlightened, but the afflictions are so vast. So how can she bear the afflictions of all sentient beings if she's enlightened? Isn't the whole point of being enlightened that you're now free of mental afflictions? Isn't that it? You're free of the second noble truth. So how can you achieve freedom, perfect enlightenment, and then still carrying the burden of the afflictions of all sentient beings? I carry the afflictions of all sentient beings. While an ordinary individual woman, she's carrying her own mental afflictions, but not those of other women or animals or any other kind of being. So who's carrying the greater amount of afflictions? This goes very deep, very fast. And that is when people like myself, ordinary person, when I'll just speak first person, then I know what I'm talking about. When affliction arises in my mind stream and I appropriate it, I am angry, I'm jealous, I'm feeling superior, then my awareness is merged with that mental affliction. I am jealous. I am really upset. Oh, I want that so much, and so forth. Or I am. The awareness is completely filtered into and merged with the mental affliction. I've appropriated it. And then because it's a mental affliction, it disturbs the equilibrium, the balance, the sanity of my own mind. Temporary mild insanity, or maybe big time insanity, because I've appropriated it. I'm the hermit crab. I've just taken on the shell of jealousy, arrogance, and so on and so on. And then I'm tormented by it. I'm upset by it. And if I act on that basis, act out of hostility, out of greed, out of jealousy, things don't turn out well. And that's called misconduct, right? Is that how Tara experiences my mental afflictions? It's a crucial point of all the Buddhas. Tara, Avalokiteshvara, Buddha Shakyamuni, Samantabhadra, Padmasambhava, any Buddha. This is really very deep and very important. Are they viewing, any Buddha, are they viewing our mental afflictions as if from afar? Like Mount Zeus on top of a mountain. Zeus, the Zeus god, on top of Olympus, Mount Olympus, viewing from afar, oh, you poor ordinary people down there with mental affliction. Is Amitabha dwelling in Sukhavati, this pure land, and looking at a distance, oh, those poor sentient beings over there, oh, you're really having a hard time. I wish you were here. Is it like that? That they're just abiding in their ongoing indwelling immutable bliss and viewing us poor plebeians over yonder? If so, then the Buddhas would be totally ensnared in dualistic grasping. I'm over here in a really nice place called Sukhavati, and you're there in Sydney. Bad choice. You could have been here, but we didn't do what you needed to do. So if that's the view, and I'm so much better than you after all, and where I live is really nice, you are definitely living in a lower grade neighborhood, then it's just back to, dualistic grasping. And that's absolutely not the case. But nor is it the case for a Buddha that the Buddha is simply dwelling in nirvana, enjoying just the untarnished, unblemished, unveiled, immutable bliss of nirvana, and is oblivious of all the sufferings of beings in samsara. That is true for an arhat. When an arhat dies, the arhat doesn't become non-existent. It's not a cosmic suicide to become an arhat. Now you become nothing. That's not true. But what is true, well, that's beyond the pay grade, above the imagination of sentient beings. But the Buddha does give references that when an arhat dies, has not become annihilated, experiencing immutable bliss, the ultimate refuge, nirvana, the safe haven. So it's not obliteration. It's not conceivable by sentient beings, but it's not annihilation. And what is clearly accepted in Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, that an arhat dwelling in nirvana is not aware of the world's sufferings, is simply aware of being immersed in nirvana with its immutable bliss, the knowing of reality as it is. So nirvana is an arhat in that sense has checked out. And that's why that's not considered to be the highest ideal or an ultimately worthy aspiration to achieve one's own liberation and leave everybody else behind. For Theravadins, it's sufficient. I can't say I was ever really deeply drawn to that aspiration. The aspiration in Mahayana Buddhism, including Vajrayana, of course, is to achieve what is called non-abiding nirvana. Now, this is unique to Buddhas. Nobody else has this. Where a Buddha, having achieved perfect enlightenment, like Buddha Shakyamuni, and then achieved parinirvana, well, certainly it's not extinction. But from the Mahayana perspective, nor is it simply being immersed in immutable bliss and oblivious of samsara. Rather, the enlightenment of a Buddha is non-abiding. That is, a Buddha is not immersed in samsara, like people like me, floundering in the ocean of samsara. Not that. That's what he is escaping from. But also not immersed in nirvana, this transcendent dimension of existence, ultimate nature of reality. Not immersed in either, but is simultaneously aware of nirvana and samsara, and seeing them as non-dual, not samsara over there, not nirvana over there. Where the rubber hits the road here, the real bite of this is that, let's say, Buddha Shakyamuni, but it could be Vajrasattva, it could be Padmasambhava, let's say Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha Shakyamuni's awareness of my suffering, my mental afflictions, I have both, is from my perspective. It's not looking from outside. Alan Wallace over there, that would be dualistic grasping. The suffering that I experience, the Buddha is aware of that suffering. The mental afflictions that I experience, the Buddha is aware of those mental afflictions. The difference between me and a Buddha is that I still have the tendency to appropriate, identify with, and act on my mental afflictions. Whereas the Buddha's awareness of my mental afflictions is free of appropriation and free of reification. Totally present with, infinitely compassionate towards me as a sentient being. Knowing my suffering from the inside. Knowing what it feels like, what I feel like when I'm tormented by anger, resentment, whatever mental affliction, knowing exactly what that feels like, but not immersed in it. And therefore, Tara is carrying the mental afflictions of all sentient beings, but she's not immersed into, she's not contracted into any of them. And therefore, her compassion for all sentient beings is non-dual. That's Buddhahood. And so Drom Tönpa is saying, who has the greater mental, she is asking, who is bearing the greater load of mental afflictions, me as an enlightened being, or a woman who's just suffering from her own mental afflictions? Interesting question. It was a loaded question. We're going until 1:30 to 3, was it? Okay, I'm gone a bit over. Let's just finish the conversation. We'll take a break. Without relinquishing the afflictions, one does not become enlightened, but the afflictions are so vast, she says. Dom replies, in that case, I too am greatly afflicted, for I carry the burden of space. And that could be referring to nirvana. She replied, Dom, in space, there is no burden to carry. So she corrects him. They all love to debate, it seems. And Dom responds to her, Tara, you have no one to carry that burden either. There is no you, Tara. There is no you, by your own nature, carrying the burden of all sentient beings' mental afflictions. Tara, you have no one to carry that burden either, so release everything into equality. The very distinction between self and other, mine and not mine, release all of that into the one taste of the indivisibility of samsara and nirvana. And let's just drop all this stuff about burden and carrying mental afflictions. And then Dom turns to Atiśa and said, who is it that carries the burden of mental afflictions? He's coming back again. Who am I? Who are you? Who carries the burden of mental afflictions? And Atiśa responds, anyone who has self-grasping, anyone who appropriates a sense of I am as separate, autonomous, intrinsically existent, appropriates my body, my mind, that person carries the burden of mental afflictions. But of course, self-grasping is an expression of delusion. In that case, Drom Tönpa replies, in that case, Tara has no self-grasping, so she's free. And for those of us who have self-grasping, how can we relinquish it? Okay. He's really not mincing around with little trivial things, is he? Started out, why do we suffer? What is nature and what is the origin of misconduct? What's the nature of pride? Is it necessary or afflicted? He goes from one very deep question to another, and now he comes back right down to really fundamental questions that all of us should be asking. And that is this ego, just put it really simply, if ego, self-grasping, I am the reification of I am, if that's what makes the mental afflictions a burden, why we appropriate them and suffer from them, then how can we be free of self-grasping? For those of us who have self-grasping, unlike Tara, how can we relinquish it? How can we be free? And on that enormous question, we'll take a break. So it's now roughly 3:20, and this was to be from 3:15 to 3:45, correct? I think so. Yeah? Is that right? 1:30, you're right. But then 1:33, oh, I get to go on for 10 more minutes? Oh boy. 9 more minutes, here it comes. Because it was really a juicy question. It was a huge question. He's about to go into very deep waters. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kim. So, okay, let's keep on going then. The momentum's up. For those of you who have self-grasping, how can we relinquish it? And then Atiśa turns again a twist. There's so many, like a plot that keeps on taking unexpected turns. The conversation keeps on taking unexpected turns, like the green lady just popping up. Who done it? The green lady. So, Dom, how many thoughts occur in a single day? Master, an inconceivable number occur. Well, Dom, how often does the absolute space of phenomena arise? Now, this is my translation of a term very difficult to translate, translated in different ways. It's Dharma Dhatu, the absolute space of Dharma Dhatu. Dharma means phenomena. Dhatu means a space, a domain, dimension. Dharma Dhatu, the absolute space of phenomena, not to be conflated with absolute space a la classical physics, Newton. Absolute space, absolute time. Madhyamaka never went there, refuted absolute space and time from the time of Nagarjuna, 2,000 years ago. But I speak of an absolute space because it's beyond the space that physicists know of, the space that we know of. It is equivalent to nirvana. It's equivalent to shunyata in the Mahayana context. Shunyata, emptiness, is equivalent to the ultimate nature of existence, equivalent to dharmata. And so in the Madhyamaka, it speaks of all phenomena emerging from emptiness, dissolving back into emptiness, right? Familiar theme. In practicing sadhana, you deserve everything into emptiness. Out of emptiness arises the seed syllable. Out of the seed syllable emerges the mandala, and so forth and so on, dissolving back into the seed syllable, back into emptiness. So that emanation and contraction comes everywhere. So the absolute space phenomena, I would say, well, it's the ultimate ground of existence, ultimate nature of existence, from which emerge relative space-time, the space-time of Einstein, emerge and then also dissolve in the contraction and expansion. So absolute space of phenomena, the ultimate nature of reality, nirvana itself, that's what he's referring to. So he says, how often does the absolute space of phenomena arise? How often is it realized? Because nirvana, clearly, I think all of you know this, nirvana is not someplace else. Like samsara is, Australia, North America, and so on, planet Earth, and nirvana is someplace else. It's not true. The Dalai Lama very pointedly commented when he's giving teachings on the text by Nagarjuna years ago in Strasbourg. I was attending them in person. This masterpiece by Nagarjuna, Bodhicitta. He's speaking of the actual nature of the mind, practicing vipassana on the nature of mind, but not simply looking at, well, thoughts arise this way, emotions, desires, mental afflictions, not looking so much phenomenologically at the mental events that come and go from moment to moment, waking state, dream state, deep sleep, but asking, okay, this is how the mind appears as external phenomena appear in a way they do not exist. So do our own mental events appear in such a way that is not how they actually exist, because subjective experiences are just as empty of inherent nature as are objective phenomena, equally. One taste. But then he added this point. When you're really focusing on fathoming the nature of the mind phenomenologically, where does your human mind come from? There's an answer to that. Where is it located, if it's really located anywhere? What happens when you fall deep asleep and for a while become basically mindless, in deep, dreamless sleep? You don't even know you're asleep. And what happens when you die? What happens to this natural phenomenon of consciousness? We can approach that phenomenologically and come up with very coherent, meaningful answers that are supported by evidence. It's true. But that's all in the realm of appearances. How does the mind appear? How does it appear to arise, appear to persist, appear to dissolve? But if you engage in what in Madhyama is called ontological analysis, that's how it appears, but how does it actually exist? The mind that is the knower, the mind that illuminates, the mind that does things, meditates, gets into mischief, falls in love, falls out of love, the mind that does all of these things. What is the actual nature of the mind as observer? What is the actual nature of the mind as agent that does all manner of things? What is that? That is aware, not the awareness, we can see that, it's luminous and cognizant. What is it that is aware? What is that subject in here to which we give the name mind? Thousands of books have been written about mind, and it's easy to wade in the shallow pools of words, concepts, books, discourse, dialogue, debate. But what's the referent of the term? And you're not going to get that by walling around in more words. They always take you away from the referent. What is the referent of the word? One probes into this, and there are myriad ways of doing this. The Mahamudra tradition, the Dzogchen tradition are two traditions of Indo-Tibetan Buddhism where this is absolutely paramount. Above all things, know the actual nature of your own mind. And then the Dalai Lama said that actual nature of your mind is called cittata. That is just that, the actual mind, the mind itself. Or semki chunyi, citta dhammata, the actual nature of the phenomenon of your mind. And when you fathom the way your mind actually is, that is nirvana. To realize the actual nature of your mind is to realize nirvana. And when I comment on this, I think of a verse that moves me very deeply from I think it's the 4th chapter of Bodhisattva. But I remember the meaning of it, and it said, Shantideva writes in the 8th century, giving away everything at once, releasing everything at once, that is nirvana. And my heart seeks nirvana. So this utter relinquishment, release, surrender, you can say, of I am, my mind, I am the agent, I'm doing, I just dissolving all of that into emptiness. And then realizing the actual nature of mind, that is realizing nirvana. And that actual nature of the mind is non-dual from the actual nature of phenomena. That's dharmata, and that's the absolute space of phenomena, dharmadhatu. So the Dalai Lama has often commented in the second turning of wheel of Dharma, perfection of wisdom, basis for Nagarjuna's middle way view, the emptiness of all phenomena from elementary particles up to Buddha nature, Buddha mind, all equally empty of inherent nature, central theme of the perfection of wisdom teachings. The Dalai Lama has referred to this as the objective clear light, the actual nature of objective phenomena, objective clear light. We turn to the third turning wheel of Dharma, dealing with Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha nature, pristine awareness, primordial consciousness. And there are multiple sutras on the commentaries like the Uttara Tantra by Maitreya, and then the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions flowing right out of that. And this is emphasizing this objective clear light. Objective clear light of emptiness, subjective clear light of your own Buddha nature, pristine awareness, primordial consciousness. So they're presented as sequentially as first here's the objective and here's the subjective. Then move seamlessly from there into Vajrayana and go straight, if you like, to Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And then you see something further, that the objective clear light and the subjective clear light have never been separate. They've always been of the same nature, the same taste. Two aspects of the same phenomenon. And Mahamudra and Dzogchen are the absolutely direct approach to fathoming the phenomenal laws of nature of the mind, the ontological nature of the mind, your emptiness of inherent nature, and penetrating right through to pristine awareness. So that is a very, very direct route. And so this is all an unpacking of this term, absolute space of phenomena, dharmadhatu. It's veiled, it's always present, it's present everywhere, but we don't see it, we don't experience it, we don't experience the immutable bliss of nirvana because it's veiled, obscured, not from its side, from our side. Just like the sun never veils itself, but it's eclipsed by the earth getting, or the moon getting in the way. And of course, it's eclipsed by clouds, but the sun never obscures itself. And dharmadhatu, which is also to say Buddha nature, never obscure themselves. They never withdraw, but they are obscured. And what? Dome, how often does the absolute space of phenomena arise? How often is it realized, manifest? Master says, Dome, being overshadowed by thoughts, it does not appear to arise. We're so caught up in non-lucid thinking, just that dust storm of just an ongoing, excuse the term, diarrhea of the mind. It just goes on and on and on and on, not producing much at all, but just obscuring what's actually there, but obscured by all the clouds, the hurricanes, the dust storms of the mind, and specifically of thoughts. Being overshadowed by thoughts, it does not appear to arise. And then Atiśa counters, Dome, for this, to fathom this, to cut through that which obscures the actual nature of reality, you need the approach of my teacher, Avadutipa. And he was a great Mahasiddha under whom Atiśa trained. For this, you need the approach of my teacher, Avadutipa. And then Dom counters, then, Master, please reveal the practical instructions of your guru. Maintain the lineage, give us the transmission that you have received before us. Please reveal the practical instructions of your guru. And he will.